The book sits inside a climate-controlled vault at Yale University's Voynich Rare Book Library. It is small, roughly the size of a modern paperback, and deeply strange. Its pages are made of vellum, scraped animal skin, and they are filled edge to edge with writing in a flowing, confident hand. But that writing belongs to no known language, no known alphabet, no known system of any kind that scholars have ever been able to identify. Alongside the text are hundreds of illustrations, strange plants that match no species on Earth, astronomical diagrams, and pools of small bathing human figures connected by elaborate pipe-like systems. The book is known today as the Voynich Manuscript. It has been studied continuously for over a century, and it remains completely undeciphered. Carbon dating conducted in 2009 placed the vellum's creation somewhere between 1404 and 1438. That makes the material itself around 600 years old. That date range lands squarely in the early 15th century, a period of intense intellectual activity across Europe and the Mediterranean world. But the carbon dating only tells us when the vellum was prepared. It says nothing definitive about when the text was written or by whom. The man who brought this manuscript to the world's attention was Wilfrid Voynich, a Polish rare book dealer with a talent for dramatic discovery. In 1912, Voynich was browsing the contents of the Villa Mondragone near Frascati, Italy, a Jesuit college selling off parts of its library to raise funds. Among the items for sale, he found a small, battered manuscript, unlike anything he had encountered in decades of dealing rare books. Voynich purchased it immediately. He spent the remaining years of his life convinced that deciphering the text would prove to be one of history's greatest revelations. He died in 1930 without an answer. The manuscript passed through several hands before eventually being donated to Yale University in 1969, where it remains today. Tucked inside the manuscript when Voynich acquired it was a letter. Written in Latin, it was dated in the mid-1660s, and it offered the first documented clue about the book's earlier history. The letter was written by Johannes Marcus Marci, rector of the University of Prague, and addressed to the renowned Jesuit scholar Athanasius Kircher in Rome. In it, Marci claimed that the manuscript had once been sold to Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II, and that Rudolf had reportedly paid 600 gold ducats for it. 600 gold ducats was an extraordinary sum, a fortune that underscores just how remarkable Rudolf believed the book to be. Marci also relayed a rumor, and it is worth stressing it was only a rumor, that Rudolf believed the manuscript to be the work of the 13th century friar Roger Bacon. Roger Bacon was famous across Europe as a man centuries ahead of his time, a philosopher and early scientist who had written about flying machines and magnifying glasses. He died around 1292, more than a century before the vellum was prepared. The Roger Bacon theory was compelling, but modern scholarship and the carbon dating results make it almost certainly wrong. Bacon died around 1292, more than a century before the vellum was prepared. After Rudolf's court, the manuscript passed to his personal physician, Jacobus Sinapius, as his faded signature was found on the first page of the manuscript. From there, the documented trail grows thinner. It appears to have passed through the hands of Georg Baresch, a Prague alchemist who spent years trying to decode it, and then to Marci himself, which is how it ended up with that letter. After Kircher received it in Rome, the trail goes cold for 2 centuries, until the Jesuits acquired the Villa Mondragone library. And Voynich found it there in 1912. So what is actually in this book? Researchers have divided its contents into several distinct sections, each with different types of illustration. The largest section is botanical, page after page of plants, each drawn with careful detail. But not one of these plants has been confidently matched to any real species. Some researchers have proposed partial matches to real plants, and a few argue that the illustrations are stylized or diagrammatic rather than literal. But no consensus has emerged. The astronomical section contains circular diagrams that resemble star charts, zodiac wheels, and what appear to be representations of the sun and moon. Several of these circles contain small faces. Some scholars believe they represent months of the year in a calendar system, though this interpretation remains disputed. Then there is the balneological section, the one that puzzles people most on first encounter. It shows dozens of small, naked human figures, apparently bathing in pools connected by elaborate tubes and channels. No one has established what this section represents. Theories range from medicinal bathing practices to allegorical representations of bodily systems, but all remain speculative. The final section is sometimes called the recipes section. Dense pages of text with small star-like drawings at the start of each paragraph, but no accompanying illustrations of what these recipes might describe. Throughout all of these sections, the text behaves strangely. Statistical analysis has shown that its word frequencies exhibit statistical patterns similar to Zipf's law, patterns that are characteristic of natural human language, unlike random gibberish. The text has word frequencies that resemble Zipf's law, a mathematical rule that governs how often words appear in virtually every known human language. Random gibberish does not behave this way. It also has something resembling grammar. Certain word-like units appear consistently at the beginnings of lines, others at the ends. The structure is not random. This is what makes the Voynich Manuscript so difficult to dismiss as a simple hoax. A hoaxer would need to have constructed a linguistically coherent artificial language, a remarkably sophisticated feat for any era. And yet, the hoax theory has serious supporters. Let us look at the major theories in order, beginning with the possibility that the manuscript is exactly what it appears: a genuine unknown text. The genuine language theory holds that the Voynich script encodes a real natural language, possibly a rare dialect, a constructed philosophical language, or an extinct tongue that left no other trace. Some researchers have proposed it could be an East Asian language written in a European-style hand. Others have suggested Arabic, Hebrew, or a lost Central Asian language. None of these proposals have achieved consensus. The cipher theory is perhaps the most intuitive explanation, that the text encodes a known language using a substitution or transposition cipher. This theory attracted some of the greatest cryptanalysts of the 20th century. During World War II, American military codebreakers, veterans of cracking Axis ciphers, attempted to solve the Voynich Manuscript in their spare time. They failed. William Friedman, who led the division that broke the Japanese purple cipher, with the breakthrough generally credited to Frank Rowlett's team under his leadership, spent years on the Voynich Manuscript and concluded only that it might be an artificial language. He never cracked it. The steganography theory offers a different approach. Perhaps there is no cipher at all, and the meaningful content is hidden within the illustrations or in patterns between the words rather than in the words themselves. This theory is difficult to test systematically, and most mainstream researchers consider it less supported by the available evidence than the cipher or genuine language hypotheses. Then there is the hoax theory, the possibility that the entire manuscript is a sophisticated fabrication designed to deceive a buyer into paying an enormous sum. The most developed version of this theory points to a man named Edward Kelly, an Elizabethan occultist and self-described scryer who worked with the astrologer John Dee and was known to operate in Rudolph II's court. Kelly had a documented history of producing fraudulent mystical texts and had access to both blank old vellum and wealthy patrons willing to pay for arcane knowledge. The theory is circumstantially intriguing. However, a 2019 study by University of Bristol researcher Gerard Cheshire claimed a very different answer, that the manuscript was written in an extinct Romance language he called Proto-Romance. Cheshire's claim generated significant media attention. It also generated significant pushback from other linguists, who argued that his proposed translations were not reproducible and his methodology was flawed. The mainstream scholarly community did not accept Cheshire's interpretation as a valid decipherment. The manuscript remains officially undeciphered. In 2018, a researcher named Greg Kondrack at the University of Alberta applied artificial intelligence to the manuscript, a neural network tested on 400 languages using samples from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The AI identified Hebrew as the most likely underlying language, with over 80% of the words matching a Hebrew dictionary once vowels were reinserted and letters unscrambled. The rest remained opaque. This was an interesting result, but again, no coherent translated text emerged that other researchers could verify. The AI finding pointed toward a direction, not a solution. One of the most structurally significant analyses came from the study of the manuscript's entropy, a measure of the information density of the text. The Voynich text has unusually low entropy compared to known languages, meaning there is less variety in its word-like units than you would expect from a fully expressive natural language. Some researchers interpret this as evidence of a cipher that compresses information. Others see it as a sign that the text encodes a language with very different grammatical rules to European languages. A small group of researchers has even proposed that the low entropy is evidence of glossolalia, meaningless invented syllables arranged to look like language. Most linguists find this unconvincing given the structural regularities. The ink and pigments used in the manuscript have also been analyzed. The results are consistent with materials available in the early to mid-15th century, which aligns with the carbon dating of the vellum. Importantly, no modern materials have been detected. If the manuscript is a forgery, it is not a modern one. It would have to have been produced from genuinely old materials in period-accurate ways. This significantly complicates any theory that Voynich himself fabricated the manuscript, since he would have needed access to 600-year-old blank vellum and period-appropriate inks. The provenance question, where the manuscript actually originated before Rudolph's court, remains wide open. Researchers have proposed northern Italy, Spain, and Central Europe as possible places of origin. The botanical illustrations have been used as a geographic clue. Some plants appear to have features associated with New World species, which, if genuine, would place the manuscript after 1492 and contradict the carbon dating. But most botanists who have examined this argument conclude that the resemblances are superficial, and that the plants are simply too stylized or fantastical to serve as reliable geographic evidence. One of the most persistently compelling aspects of the manuscript is how consistent it is across its entire length. The script does not change. The style does not waver. It reads as the work of one or two practiced hands. Paleographers, scholars who study historical handwriting, have identified what appears to be two distinct scribal hands within the text, suggesting at minimum two authors or copyists, both writing in the same script, but both hands write in the same unknown script, with the same statistical properties. This shared structure across multiple writers, if that is what we are seeing, is another point in favor of genuine communicative content. There have been dozens of claimed decipherments over the past century. Each has attracted some attention. None has been accepted by the mainstream research community. What makes a decipherment credible? Scholars generally require that a proposed solution be reproducible, that another researcher, following the same method, can independently confirm the same readings. They also require that the decoded text be coherent and meaningful, not just a string of words that can be connected into a sentence if you try hard enough. So far, no proposed solution has cleared both of these bars to the satisfaction of the broader scholarly community. The manuscript remains in its vault at Yale, still waiting. What we can say with reasonable confidence is this: the vellum is genuinely old. The materials are consistent with the early 15th century. The text follows statistical patterns associated with natural language. And the book itself, whatever it is, was considered valuable enough for someone to pay 600 gold ducats for it, for scholars to wrestle with for 4 centuries before Voynich ever found it. Whether it is an elaborate cipher, a lost language, a philosophical system no one has yet recognized, or something else entirely, the Voynich Manuscript refuses to give up its answer. 600 years of human curiosity, 4 centuries of increasingly sophisticated analytical tools, and the book remains exactly what it was when it first landed in a vault at Rudolph's court, unread. If you found this mystery as compelling as we did, subscribe for more stories from history's unanswered questions.